Okay, let's be real for a second. Have you ever felt totally frustrated that our modern English word for love just completely fails us? I mean, it's a massive linguistic monolith, right? Think about it. We use the exact same four-letter word to describe our feelings for a slice of pepperoni pizza, our golden retriever, and the human being we've pledged to spend the rest of our lives with. It makes absolutely no sense. It's a huge, confusing concept. But in this explainer, we are going to completely shatter that monolith. We're going to break human connection down into its foundational biological, psychological, and philosophical pieces. By the time we're done, you are going to walk away with an entirely new relational vocabulary to actually understand your own connections. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, the vocabulary of affection. 2, your brain on love. 3, the geometry of relationships. 4, how love evolves. And finally 5, the art of loving. Section 1. The vocabulary of affection, how language shapes our understanding of connection. You see, classical Galenic society recognized that throwing all human attachment into one bucket was just a terrible idea. They built highly specialized modes of affection because they understood instinctively that different relationships require completely different emotional and ethical duties. Take Eros, for example. That's your primal, passionate physical desire where you literally lose cognitive control. It's intense. But contrast that with Philia, which is a dispassionate, highly virtuous, reciprocal goodwill based on shared values. Then there's Storge. That's the instinctive, comfortable affection you feel for your family just because you share the same domestic space. And finally, Agape. Now this is a deliberate, unconditional choice of the will to act for someone else's ultimate good, completely lacking in self-interest.
But because we've collapsed all of those highly distinct, nuanced Greek concepts into one English word, we've inadvertently created massive, painful confusion in our modern lives. We literally expect one single human being, a modern spouse or partner, to simultaneously fulfill the roles of passionate lover, dependable friend, protective family member, and selfless provider. The Greeks would tell us that this is an incredibly dangerous, almost impossible structural expectation to place on any single relationship.
Section 2. Your brain on love. The neurochemical cocktail of madness and attachment.
Now, what's really fascinating is how your brain biologically splits attraction right down the middle. Functional MRI scans show that early passion actually dissociates two distinct drives. On one hand, we have wanting. This is a frantic, goal-directed drive governed by dopamine in the ventral tegmental area. And get this, the brain scans of someone in this state look strikingly similar to someone experiencing cocaine addiction. On the flip side, we have liking, which is governed by opioid hotspots, and that represents the actual hedonic enjoyment or pleasure you get from the person. This dissociation is wild. It completely explains why, in passionate love, you can experience an overwhelming, frantic wanting of a partner that drives you to compulsive behaviors, even if the relationship is toxic and you don't actually like the way they treat you.
And it gets crazier. The physical symptoms of that early attraction phase are intense. You experience a massive spike in the stress hormone cortisol, and your serotonin levels become severely depleted. Believe it or not, this chemical profile is identical to someone suffering from obsessive-compulsive disorder. It creates those obsessive, intrusive thoughts where you literally cannot stop thinking about the person. But eventually, thankfully, we shift to the attachment phase. The brain starts releasing oxytocin and vasopressin. This creates a deeply calming, stress-buffering safe haven that enables long-term monogamous pair bonding. The absolute madness of new attraction naturally gives way to the deep, stabilizing calm of attachment.
Section 3. The geometry of relationships. Psychometric architectures of connection. This brings us to the psychometric level, specifically Robert Sternberg's famous triangular theory of love. He argues that relationships are built on 3 vertices. First, intimacy. This is the warmth, that slow-growing emotional safety. Second, passion, the hot, highly volatile, rapid onset of acute physical arousal. And third, commitment, the cold, cognitive, rational decision to stay together, which basically acts as a buffer against relational stress. What's so interesting here is how combining these creates different relational profiles. High intimacy and high passion with zero commitment, well, that gives you romantic love, which perfectly describes a modern situationship. But high commitment with zero intimacy and zero passion, that creates empty love, which we unfortunately often see in the terminal stages of deteriorated marriages.
Let's see how this geometric approach builds directly into John Allen Lee's color wheel theory. Lee suggested that we all possess dynamic love styles that actually shift based on our developmental stage and the specific partner we're with. You have your primary colors. There's Eros, the red, passionate idealist, Ludus, the blue, uncommitted game player who actively avoids emotional involvement, and Storge, the yellow, quiet, friendship-based companion. And when you start mixing these, you get secondary styles. Mix Eros and Ludus, you get Mania, the highly volatile, obsessive purple. Mix Ludus and Storge, and you get Pragma, the green, highly logical individual who is basically working off a strict shopping list of partner traits.
So, I have to ask you to evaluate your own relationship right now. What is your configuration? What narrative genre or color are you bringing to the table, and what is your partner bringing? Psychologists warn us over and over that mismatched profiles are primary drivers of psychological collapse. If you pair a Ludus game player who thrives on distance with a mania obsessive who demands constant reassurance, that system is inevitably going to break down. Understanding your relational geometry is absolutely key to survival. Section 4. How Love Evolves, Timelines, Phases, and Sociological Lenses.
And this brings us to a brilliantly mapped biological timeline from researcher Dorothy Tenov. Between 12 to 18 months, your depleted serotonin levels naturally return to their baseline. Those obsessive thoughts, they literally fade away. Between 18 months to 3 years, that intense limerence or infatuation reaches its natural biological shelf life. But look at the 2-year mark. This is typically when couples name their partner as their primary attachment figure. What you absolutely must take away from this is that the fading of initial intense passion is not a failure of your relationship. It is a biological necessity. Your body physically cannot sustain the stress of the attraction phase. It has to fade so you can build a stable, secure base.
So how do we build that secure base? Eros' wheel theory maps this cognitive progression out perfectly. It all starts with rapport, just basic social ease and comfortable contact. As trust builds, you move to self-revelation, which is the vulnerable sharing of your private thoughts. This leads naturally into mutual dependence, where your daily habits and routines interlock. And finally, you hit personality need fulfillment, where you are deeply satisfying each other's core psychological needs for validation and safety. This step-by-step process is exactly how initial social contact transforms into a deeply interwoven emotional structure.
Now, how we actually frame this evolution is heavily debated in modern sociology. On one side, you have sociologists like Anthony Giddens arguing for what he calls confluent love. This is a highly liberating, democratic view where relationships exist primarily for mutual emotional satisfaction and self-actualization, essentially freeing people from rigid traditional roles. On the other hand, we have the feminist critique. This perspective argues that the cultural ideology of romance actually operates as a deceptive patriarchal trap, designed to condition women into sacrificing their career autonomy and emotional energy under the guise of romantic fulfillment. These are the two major lenses through which sociologists observe marriage today, proving that love is just as much a social construct as it is a biological imperative.
Section 5. The Art of Loving, Reconstructing Love as a Deliberate Practice.
Sociologist Erich Fromm perfectly summarizes this whole paradigm shift. In his humanist approach, he fundamentally rejects the pervasive cultural idea that love is an accident, some passive feeling that you just inexplicably fall into. No, love is an active art. It requires deliberate study. It requires theoretical knowledge, rigorous practice, and real effort. Mature love is built on the active character of giving, and it's completely grounded in care, responsibility, respect, and deep knowledge of the other person. You don't fall in love, you stand in it.
The theologian C.S. Lewis added another really beautiful layer to this by contrasting two distinct typologies. First, there's need love. Now, this is a natural reflection of human vulnerability. It's born of dependency, seeking immediate satisfaction just because you feel incomplete. It's very human, but it's inherently self-focused. Then you have gift love. This actually mimics the divine. It flows from a sense of total providential abundance, giving freely to provide for the partner without demanding anything in return.
And Lewis introduces one final really stunning concept, appreciative love. He uses the metaphor of tasting an exquisite, rare wine or smelling a wild rose on a walking path. With this, there's no painful deprivation you're trying to cure. The delight exists purely to celebrate the beauty of the object itself. Appreciative love in a relationship is a silent, aesthetic love. It's treasuring, admiring, and delighting in a person simply for their own sake, rejoicing that they exist, completely independent of needing to possess them or use them to fill your own emotional voids.
And so, I leave you with this final provocative thought to wrap up our entire journey today. Are you treating your love as a passive feeling or an active art?
If we genuinely want our connections to survive past the initial dopamine spikes and the serotonin crashes, we have to stop waiting for a chemical reaction to sustain us. We have to learn the geometry of our partners. We have to understand the natural timelines of passion. And most importantly, we have to wake up every single day and actively practice the art of consummate love. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep practicing, and I'll catch you next time.